All right. Thank you so much for joining us for another HRAI Insider webinar. Today we have Gary Dummer, National Sales Manager with Superior Radiant Products. He's going to be joining us in just 2 seconds to talk about green energy radiant heating solutions. He joined us last month as well. It was a fantastic webinar, and he is back to share his wisdom once again. Just so you know, a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this, so if you want to watch it again or share it with someone who can make the presentation, please go over to our HRAI YouTube page. And on your HRAI's page as well, you'll also find the upcoming events. We got a bunch of other webinars coming up that I think you will enjoy. So at this point, Gary, if you want to flick your camera on and say hello.
Here I am.
There he is. Before you take it away, just let people know that you can submit a question in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or you can put it in the comment section as well. And I think we're going to be taking those at the end, right, Gary?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. That's my cue to exit, and you do your thing.
Thank you. As you mentioned, my name is Gary Dummer, and my point today is to try to explain electric radiant heating from our perspective, obviously. I will say there are other forms of electric heating, but since we're a radiant heating manufacturer, I'd like to explain what we have to offer at the moment. Now, today's agenda, we're going to look at electric versus gas infrared, electric element types, applications in the future. Now, infrared is a highly efficient form of heat, regardless whether it's gas or electricity. With the infrared heating, converting to electric from gas requires between 10 and 30% less BTUs or kilowatts to heat the given space. As you know, we don't have combustible gases on electric heat, so that's mostly the reason for that. We don't have to account for that. This gives electric infrared an edge in potential efficiency. Now, like gas, electric infrared is very similar in terms of its wavelength, and depending on its wavelength would depend on whether we would classify it as a long wave, which is basically no visible light, and it's low intensity, very similar to the tube heaters. Medium wave has kind of an orange glow, a little higher wavelength, more dispersed, but still can be focused. Now, short wave, I don't know if you've seen those outside on hotels, they're very bright, high intensity, concentrated heat, easily focused. Light can be filtered through a short glass, but we'll get into the uses for that in a second. Now, a short wave basically has a quartz bulb in it, and that creates the heat, which creates the higher wavelength. A carbon fiber is what they typically use for a medium wavelength electric heater, infrared heater. And what we use for the long wave is what we call a shielded nickel chrome, and that is embedded inside the actual heater. Now, electric heaters can be used, heat produced by electric current flowing through high resistant wire carbon fiber filament. Long waves, as you can see here in the example, metal sheath infrared radiant elements composed of a nickel chromium heating wire embedded in an electrical insulating refractory, which is encased in a metal tube. Basically, you can have 2 or 3 different coated wires inside an aluminum base, and they heat up. They get the whole structure below heated up, and that's what gives us the long wave and infrared. Now, the medium wave is a lamp. It's a heating lamp made up of carbon fiber inside a quartz enclosure. May be equipped with colored glass ceramic material to reduce element glare. They're kind of more used for outside use, can be used for inside use, but they're a little more stronger intensity. Now, the short wave is a finely coiled tungsten filament surrounded by a quartz glass. These units may also have a colored glass ceramic to reduce element glare. They could be quite bright. You'll probably see them definitely outside. Sometimes you'll see them even under hotel entranceways to keep the people warm at night. They do produce a very strong heat, but it's very localized. Now, long wave, no visible light. Same kilowatt output as the short wave or medium wave will be provided over a larger area with longer wavelengths and less intensity. Long wave are well absorbed by people and objects, providing maximum comfort. Basically, we can use these on indoor applications, could be smaller commercial buildings. One of the examples we listed here as well was an actual water treatment plant in Quebec. We used about 30 of them in there. And there was a lot of pools all over the place, and yet it heated it up quite well. So I was quite pleased with that. The medium wave, warm orange glow is not harsh in the eye. The kilowatt output, same as the short wave, but spread over a larger area and with less intensity. Still enough intensity to provide comfort levels in spot heating, either indoors or outdoors. So we can use the medium wave indoor or outdoor. It's not too intense. So if you want to do spot heating in a small area, somebody over a desk or something, say in the middle of a plant or something like that, they work well for that. But they're strong enough that we could also put them outside. Longer wavelengths means better absorption of the objects and including people. Short wave. The bright light can be annoying and should be not looked into directly. If you've seen them, you'll know they're pretty bright. Shortwave filtered with a short glass loses some efficiency, but creates a more acceptable glow rather than a harsh light. So it kind of turns it into a reddish color, but it's not as strong. Maximum heat per kilowatt over a small area can keep comfort levels high when temperature are cooler. So they're good for, outside, we used to have smoking areas at one time. They're really good for that. Or anywhere where, in a patio, anywhere where people congregate and want to do a little small area to keep someone warm. Now, efficiency and comfort. Comfort is achieved at a lower ambient temperature when using infrared heat. This is just generic stuff we use regardless which one it is, but it still applies. The combination of a delivered heat efficiency of an infrared heater with the fact that the room ambient temperature can be lower than required for traditional space heating equals energy savings. What it's basically saying is because infrared, you absorb it. It's very similar to what I explained in my first presentation. You could be on a ski hill and yet it'll be cool, but you feel warm because you're feeling the warmth from the sun, which is the infrared. We're saying the same thing here. We don't have to keep the temperature in the building at 70 degrees, for example, if you got the infrared, because the people themselves will absorb it. So you save money that way. And it doesn't matter whether it's electric or gas, it's the same principle. Now, electric infrared transition from gas infrared heaters. The move to space heating decarbonization is an opportunity to realize the energy savings presented with infrared heating technology to further reduce CO2 emissions. Fuel savings and CO2 emissions reductions due to infrared heating are already present contributor in Canadian energy footprint. The annual energy consumption of radiant heaters in Canada currently correspond to 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. In this review, the electric heaters are analyzed relative to gas infrared heaters when providing the same heat cover to users. The analysis is based on natural gas and electric prices in Ontario and other locations in Canada, as well as carbon tax. And this is what my next chart. Basically, we're comparing a gas heater with an electric heater in terms of cost. And that will be coming up next. So what we have here is the electrical cost per kilowatt. And as you can see, it varies from Quebec, which is fairly inexpensive. Ontario is obviously more expensive. And you go down from there. I mean, Quebec, it gets more expensive as you go down. The point is that, in fact, in Ontario, we got like 3 or 4 different times they charge. So we averaged it out to 13 cents a kilowatt. It can go as low as 9 or as high as 17, but for the most part, it's going to be roughly around 13 cents a kilowatt. That's what we used.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah.
There's some comments that the audio was a tiny bit low. And I know we had a couple technical issues beforehand. Is it possible to turn up your mic on your end?
Let me see here.
Yeah. Just want to make sure people can hear what you're talking about.
How's that? Does that help?
A little bit.
I can yell. That
May-
helps.
Maybe just yeah, maybe just pick up the
Actually,
volume a
I
tiny
turned it
bit.
down the wrong way. How's that?
I'll keep an eye on the comments, but thank you.
All right, I'll just talk louder. How's that?
There you go.
There, you
Project.
can hear me now.
Cool.
All right. What we have here is we have a chart comparing two 80,000 tube heaters versus roughly 4.5 kilowatt electric heaters. So we're trying to keep them even. You got BTUs 160,000 versus 138,000 to electric. You got 96,000 net coming to the floor with the gas, because obviously the gas is taken into account combustible losses and things like that, which we obviously don't have with electric. So that keeps it fairly soon. So you got about 95,348 BTUs going to the floor. In kilowatts, it's roughly 28.1 for the gas and 27.9 for the electric. Now, usage time, when you're natural gas, you're pricing it roughly 30 cents per cubic meter. So the time-wise, it's roughly the same. Now, what you have here, though, is operation cost comparison. When you're running a gas infrared heater, obviously because it's gas, your cost is roughly around $1,359.21. When you're running it in Ontario, and that's for 1,000 hours, when you're running it in Ontario, based on the gas per, the electric cost per kilowatt, you're going to be somewhere around $5,467. So obviously there's a big difference right now in cost between electric and gas. Now, operation cost, when you're looking in Quebec, because of Quebec's obviously better pricing in electric, it comes down a bit. Now, what's built in, what's not included is in the gas, you got to add what they call the carbon tax. So depending on how much tonnage you use of CO2, you can see the chart here about what you would get added to your bill. So if you use a lot of it, then obviously you pay a higher amount. So it's a combination of the actual operating cost plus the CO2 carbon tax versus the electric cost. Well, what we're doing here, like I said, is we're comparing natural gas infrared heaters versus electric infrared heaters at the moment. Now, this chart here basically just shows the radiant pattern on the floor and the floor temperatures of a 80,000 20-foot infrared heater versus a 4.5 kilowatt electric heater hanging at 8 feet. So as you can see, obviously because it's more BTUs and longer, you're going to get a wider path versus the electric heat. So we need more of them to equal that one, or anything really. Now, considering when replacing a gas electric heater with electric. Now, this is going to vary because it depends on what you're using and things coming up in the future. But for the moment, we got smart placement of heaters. Deliver the heat where it's required, the infrared advantage. So it's like place it where you want it, okay, where you think. It's like any other design and you're using, depends whether you're doing spot heating or you're actually doing heating the whole facility. Consider the heat pattern of gas-fired heaters, no different. That's the same we've always done. Select high-efficiency infrared electric heaters. And that depends, again, which one you use, depends on the application. Use lower installation height on the, if you're looking at spot heating, then that's important. If you're doing ambient air, it doesn't matter as much. It matters more if you're trying to spot heat someone to get the right height based on the kilowatt you have. You obviously use the rated voltage and ensure there's enough kilowatts available on site. Another issue at the moment that you run into where someone would like to have the heater and it turns out they don't have enough power to run it, which is, I think, is a common problem for quite a few applications right now. Okay, applications. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, will vary with the type of heater, depending on the application. Consider the characteristics of a long wave, medium wave, or short wave. All indoor outdoor spaces are candidates for electric infrared as long as the required power is available. Again, stress power. With infrared, you can heat a spot or the whole space. This is what I mentioned before. Now, these are just some of the examples we've done with electric heat. Obviously, we've done patios. There's water treatment plant, which is in the top right-hand corner. Those are the heaters that went in there, and they're quite happy with them. But as you can see, we only got like 3 feet of sidewalk to run around all the way across these pools, but it did a nice job. I was actually there. We have salmon factories, fast food drive-throughs, through kiosks, restaurant patios are very popular, and restaurant indoor dining rooms. Now, how do I put it? As time goes on and research and development gives us bigger infrared electric heaters, these applications will become more different types. Now, the future. New advances in infrared heating are happening now. Waste heat recoveries for gas-fired ion infrared heaters. Improved efficiency of electric heaters, efficient reflectors, and new element types. So we're experimenting, developments being made. We know electric's coming. And so as we speak, we're developing bigger and better electric heaters, just like they did with the cars. We're experimenting and coming up with bigger systems. New fuel blends. Now this is interesting. Blended hydrogen nitrogen, CSA approved up to 5% already. Now they're in the plans. There's a 25% hydrogen currently feasible, 100% hydrogen, which is being experimented on. I'm sure you've heard about that. Biofuels and renewable natural gas. Also, you have, as well as the heaters, you have smart controls for gas and electric with modularization. So it allows the heaters to modulate rather than just go on and off and that sort of thing. So it improves efficiency that way. Now, in terms of what's happening with the government, which I always find very interesting, as you know, the federal budget was released March 28th, 2023. There's a lot of stuff in it, but I just narrowed it down to a couple items I think is probably the most important. One was and this number varied depending which I read, so I put them both, but refundable credit between 15 to 30% of the capital cost of investment in electricity generation, including from solar, small nuclear reactors, and wind, as well as battery storage systems, heat pumps, and industrial zero emission vehicles. The other part was a tax credit of 40% of the capital cost is coming to produce low emission hydrogen. The lower the emissions, the higher the credit. So again, hydrogen is becoming a fuel. They're already experimenting with it in Germany as we speak. I know in Mississauga, for example, they got a facility there. They've had it for quite a while where they've been experimenting, running buses on hydrogen and stuff. So it is there, it's coming. Now, the Ontario government at the moment, and if something different, somebody can let me know, but so far the Ontario government solution was to build more gas-fired generation units that was announced last October. Of course, there's been a lot of flack back and forth because they're saying, yeah, we're going to produce more CO than less for the moment. But so far, that's about all they announced that I know of. And I haven't heard, at the moment, I haven't seen any plans to actually build these things. So I'm not sure where the Ontario government is in terms of producing more electrical power. But regardless, they're going to have to do that because, as everyone knows, we don't have enough power on our grid. Anyone who was around here a few years ago when wind was in power, we were having blackouts and everything else. Nothing's changed in terms of power production. So if we start adding more and more power to the grid, we're obviously going to have to produce more and more power. Now, in a recent forecast, the Independent Electricity System Operator, IESO, the Crown Corporation that runs the province electrical grid, predicted that if nothing changes in Ontario, we will be seeing electrical shortages during the peak summer period starting this year and continuing thereafter. The report also forecasts shortages during peak winter usage from 2023 to 2028. So the bottom line is, regardless whose province it is, whatever, if we're going to continue down the electrical grid in terms of using more and more electricity rather than gas, we have to improve the power generation, and we can't ignore it. That's it for my presentation. Is there any questions? And can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you so much.
Good.
That was a quick one, Gary. You caught me off guard there for a second. I was having my sip of coffee. We'll take time for any questions. Now, are you going to be joining us again down the road? is the question I want to ask you.
Joining you down the road in what
For
respect?
HRAI webinars in the future.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. There's a little reluctance in that one.
No, I wasn't sure what the question was. We've done it. I think this is the fourth one I've done, so probably, most likely.
Yeah, no, we like having you, so we'll make sure to plan
Uh,
another one. In the meantime, while we're taking questions, folks, you can check out hrai.ca/events. That'll show you what's coming up in the next couple months. We've got a good range of webinars from workforce development to technologies to workforce trends. So please check that out. Register for stuff like this. And if you're late joining us or you missed a little bit, you can also find it on HRAI's YouTube page as well. So I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. No, it was just comments about the sound, but those have not persisted, so I think we fixed that issue.
I just yelled louder.
So you've got your contact information there if anyone wants to reach out and maybe ask questions about the presentation, but
Sure.
I think we will let people have a little more time on their lunch.
Okay, then. Sounds good.
All right, thanks so much, everyone, and see you for the next one. Cheers.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.